Mod.
Wait till you meet the new iMac.
We have been working on this for 2 years. I know some of you wanted this sooner, but I think you'll agree it's going to be worth the wait. This is the best thing I think we've ever done. It's an all-in-one. We passionately believe that consumer computers should be all-in-ones, so you don't have these boxes spewing all over your house. And it solves the whole cable mess problem as well. All-in-ones are clearly the way to go. And everyone has a flat screen. Now, the move to flat screens we recognized early on is going to be the biggest single change in desktop computers in the next decade. And we realized that we had the opportunity of the decade to reshape desktop computers. Now, normally, what we might have done, and I think what everybody else will do, we could have taken our iMac and taken a hacksaw to it, just chopped off the back. So we're going to put a flat display on the front. Who needs the back? There it is, the new iMac, ladies and gentlemen. But there are some problems with this. There are some fatal flaws in this approach. With the flat screen in the front, you notice it's not very flat anymore, is it? Because we've glommed the back on with all the rest of the stuff. There's nothing flat about this computer. But the other problems go deeper. We have to put the logic board parallel to the display in back of it, which means the connectors come out on the side, making the worst kind of cable mess right in front of your eyes. And even worse, we have to turn the drives on the side. And in particular with the optical drives, they can't run at full speed on the side. We have to slow them way down. The performance goes way down when you turn them on their sides. And you could never fit a super drive in here. So this approach is far less than great, and we rejected it. And then we had our big idea. And the big idea was that rather than glom these things all together and ruin them all, a lower performance computer and a flat screen that isn't flat anymore, why don't we let each element be true to itself? If the screen is flat, let it be flat. If the computer wants to be horizontal, let it be horizontal. And we came up with a radically new design. It is a technical tour de force. John Rubinstein and his hardware team have outdone themselves this time. It's got superior ergonomics to anything we've ever built, and I would dare say maybe the industry's ever built. And it has a beauty and a grace that is going to last the next decade. So it is my privilege to now present to you the new iMac. Come on over. This thing is a marvel. The whole computer is in this tiny little base, and the screen is incredibly flat. Let's get the video up. You can see this thing. Take a look at the screen, and I can move the screen with just a touch. Isn't that incredible? And notice that the display stays parallel, but I can change its angle, of course, as well. So I can move this with just a touch anywhere I want. If I want to show something off, if I want to hunker down with a spreadsheet, anything I want. And it swivels 180 degrees as well. Amazing. And the screen literally floats in midair. It's unbelievable. The entire computer's here. Come on around. You see the disk drive slot in the front that opens when the tray comes out. And around the back, we've got all the connectors. right there. Now, the whole computer is in the base. Everything. The entire computer, the hard drive, the optical drive, and the power supply. There's no power brick dangling off here somewhere. The whole thing is in the base. And to give you a feeling for how small this is, here I've got a jewel case CD. Let me just put that up here. You can get a feel for how small this thing really is. So, thank you. So the new iMac, again, it's really wonderful.
Hello, I'm Greg Recke of Recke Mods, and welcome to episode 16 of Season 2 of my PowerPC Series. In this episode, we'll be introducing you to my 17-inch iMac G4 800 megahertz, as we can see right here. This is a very neat system and very revolutionary for the time, and still revolutionary today when you think about it. This system is based off the first generation of the iMac G4. It's a kind of a weird transition between the first and second generations. And I say that because the first generation, when it came out in January of 2002, was just a 15-inch like the original iMac G3. And it was just a square screen. Well, I think it was September 2002, they came out with the widescreen, or the 17-inch. And these systems right here, this is one of them, of course. These systems had an upgraded GPU in them, the MX4 compared to the MX2. And other than that, the board itself is the same. Same layout, same chips, etc., etc. The first generations came with a 700 megahertz G4 and a 800 megahertz G4. And the first generation, the first half of the production run, came with a 700 as the base model, and then the mid tier was also a 700, I think, and then the top tier was an 800 megahertz. Well, when this one came out, it sold side by side with the 15s. And the 15s had the Apple Garamond iMac font on it. This is the Myrid. It's the next generation of a font, okay? This font, of course, carried on to later Macs, and eventually would appear on the 15-inch again in early 2003. But until 2003, that font was still the same old font that was found on, for instance, the iMac G3. This, of course, had the new one. And what made this similar to the second generation was it used the same screen as the second generations, the 17-inch ones. And it also used the same GPU as the first revision of the second generation, aka the 1 gigahertz. Later on, the 2 gigahertz had the GeForce FX 5200 Ultra. These systems they made from September to January. So they didn't make many of them, I don't assume. They're really hard to find. This is a very hard system to find. The 17-inch 800, which was the very last officially supported OS 9 Mac iMac ever made. Of course, the later models, the 1 gigahertz can technically run OS 9 if it's hacked, and it will run it. I've been getting it to run on my first iMac G4, but I've not had super success with it yet, with sound and stuff. But it's got basically the same hardware in it as this, except a faster CPU. So it should run OS 9, and it does. It just doesn't do it well. And the 1.25s, like the world's fastest iMac G4, as you can see here playing in the background, because my new iMac won't actually play the video that I wanted it to play, so I'm doing some filler here for the background. And as you saw with that came with the 5200 Ultra, and it's very different. And it should run OS 9 with a lot of hacking, but you won't have GPU acceleration yet, at least. And it's just, anyway, I'm getting off topic. This system is what we're covering today. And this system I got for an incredible deal on Facebook. I probably bought it from the guy that bought it off the original owner of the system. Or he was given this to him or something. He was some kind of roof repair guy or something. He didn't know what he had. He just knew it was an Apple and it was an iMac. Basically, he said that it wasn't working right, and I didn't know this until after I went to pick it up. He told me it was running Linux. It was running Ubuntu 12.04 on it. And it just wasn't quite set up right. I believe the original owner had set it up to try to extend the life a bit longer, and I assume it did, but they must have had it hooked into the Ethernet because they had the internet drivers messed up for the Wi-Fi card, and it wasn't working right. It didn't have any OS X installs on it or OS 9. I wiped all of that and put it back to the way I'd like to have the system. And this system didn't just come alone, okay? This system, in this condition on eBay, probably goes for $200. I got this system for $65. I also got extras with it. It came with the original Pro keyboard. Really nasty, really in bad shape. It's nasty, but it works great. I had to replace a few keys on it, but it works wonderful. I'm debating whether I should clean it or not. I might just use it as a test keyboard, but right now you'll be seeing that when we're showing off the system. It also came with the original Pro speakers, and one really big deal, it came with an iSub, and we'll cover that later in the video and show you how it works. The iSub came with the system. I'd say all of this was bought with the system. The iSub might have been bought for an iMac G3. The original owner upgraded to a G4 and decided to leave the iSub with it. I had no clue if the iSub worked because there was no way to test it with no drivers and stuff. But to my very happy findings, it does work. It works great. It has no issues that iSubs eventually get. It works like it's brand new. And other than some cobwebs in it that I can't get out yet, I haven't taken the whole thing apart, and a few dead bugs in it, it's in great shape, and it's kind of like new. It works very well. So yeah, I got a great deal on this system, and let's go into the system itself and show it off. So let's go. Okay, so here's the system, and there's a reason why this system is one of my favorite Apple designs of all time, tied with the Quicksilver PowerMac G4. And that's because of the elegance of the simplicity and all this stuff. But this was actually a very complicated design when you think about it, but it was also still really simple. And this is also my favorite screen size for the iMac G4s, a 17-inch. The 15-inch looked kind of funny with a square screen, as you saw in episode, I can't remember which it was, episode 15, I believe, of last season, when I first got the wrong iMac. That was a 15-inch first generation. That was the very base model of the iMac G4. The 17-inch was perfectly balanced. Perfect size screen, perfect size base. The base stayed the same on every size of the models. And the 1.25 gigahertz ended up also having a 20-inch, which looks very disproportionate in my opinion. The top just looks really heavy. And these systems were very neat, but they also do have one little issue, which we'll quickly cover. As we know, the screen can move and swivel, as we can see here. It can go up and down like that. It can also tilt like that. The problem is, as the years go on, most of these systems will start getting fatigue in the springs that are in the arm. And basically, it will cause them to just sag down to like that. Okay, to find one with good springs is an issue. Sometimes it's really hard to find one with good springs, and sometimes the spring might not just be the problem. It might also be the joints and the gears in the assembly, which could cause them to lock up, get all crunchy, and not move. This is a very nice example. The original owner took great care of this, and we'll go into more detail about that in a second. But this is the iMac G4, the 800 megahertz. So we're going to go over what makes this thing an 800. First off, this model in particular was the highest optioned model you could get in 2002. All 17-inch iMacs came completely maxed out with every single high-end option you could get standard from the factory. Every single option. It came with an 80 gigabyte hard drive, 512 megabytes worth of RAM, and the 17-inch display, and a super drive. It has a super drive in it. But the only thing that it didn't come standard with was an airport card. That was still optional. And this one apparently didn't, and I'll go into detail about that when I show you a video I filmed a few days ago about upgrading the memory. This thing was never opened, never touched, other than the base plate being taken off, and you'll find out why that base plate was taken off later in the video. But other than that, this thing was 100% all original, down to every single Apple factory part that came in it. It still works 100% with all the original parts. It is an amazing shape. It's like brand new, and it shows. And basically, I'll tell you what, before we go into the details about the case itself, let's show you the memory upgrades. And we'll just do it right now. So here we go. Okay, so before I film the video, I thought I'd show you guys this video where I am going to be opening this iMac G4 up for the very first time ever. This system is 100% original. Everything works fine on it, but I want to upgrade the RAM in it to 1 gigabyte. Right now it has 512 megs of RAM in it, as we can see right here, and we're going to be cracking the seal open for the very first time since probably around late 2002 when this system was built. So let's get on to it. Okay, so I'm filming this video about a day and a half or so after the last episode, episode 15, where I was talking about the world's fastest iMac G4, part 3. That board sitting right there, it's going out probably tomorrow. But, you know, it's sitting there, that's why I talked about it. But now we're going to be swapping the RAM out in this. And, you know, it may have been opened once before because the screws look a little bit worn. And the base plate seems to be on sideways, which is a little suspect. But I can guarantee you that this is all original. All the specs should meet up. It's got, let's see here, we can show you right here. It has, let's see here, 512 megs of RAM, which it does, 80 gigabyte hard drive, which it does. Yeah, this is all basically the original setup here. So we'll pull this bottom off. And here we go. Ah, that's interesting. Okay. I did not expect to see that. That is not the original Wi-Fi card. In fact, this is a Lucent card from... that's interesting. This is a Lucent card from the episode, what was it? 12, I think it was, where I was talking about my Wallstreet. This is a Lucent Gold card, I think. And it looks like it's been modified. Apparently the original card must have went bad and they didn't want to spend the extra money to replace it. So they put this in here. This is not factory. And this is weird. I've not yet seen this yet. So yeah, we'll pull this out like that. And I guess I'll have to get a new Wi-Fi card for it. Although this seems to be working fine as an airport card, so I might leave it. Anyway, so that's the reason why the base has been opened before, because they replaced the airport card apparently. But we're going to continue on, take these 4 screws out and continue on. Let's swap this RAM out since we already have this out. So the airport card has gone bad in this and has been replaced. That is very interesting to know. So we'll set this in here. And there we go. Now we've got half the RAM upgraded. We'll take this off, and while I'm in here, I'll also be replacing the thermal paste. So anyway, I'm going to set up the camera so we can actually watch me do this. I pulled out my WaveLAN card just to verify, and yes, this does appear to be indeed a WaveLAN card. All the lights and stuff line up, all the antennas, everything. This is a WaveLAN card, so it's very interesting that they did that. Okay, so let's begin the time lapse. Okay, so I picked everything up and it's already unplugged the, probably I think that's the hard drive. Interesting. But anyway, here's the insides. We'll replace the param battery, which surprisingly is original and still keeping time. And we'll also replace this thermal paste and all that thermal paste and put the new RAM in. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so I was looking around in this, and this is interesting. This connector right here, whatever it goes to, it looks like it's the accessory power connector, and it is actually screwed into the case frame here. So when you pull the board off, it disconnects it. So I'll have to line it up perfectly to pop it back in. Very interesting design. And I guess the hard drive and the optical drive are actually both plugged into one IDE channel. Interesting. Okay, so I pulled the bracket off of here. I haven't lifted it off the G4 yet. Let's lift it off together. Here we go. I'll be. This is the first time I've ever seen factory paste that's still tacky. And this is, from what I can tell, probably original factory paste. This is probably more of a sign that it is, because this system doesn't overheat and this thermal paste is very dried out. So yeah, that's original paste from what I can tell. Who knows? This might have been replaced at one point. It doesn't look quite like what Apple uses at the factory. This looks more like Arctic Silver. Well, anyway, I'm still saying that this hasn't been opened before, but who knows at this point. Anyway, so we're going to clean all this up, and I'll show you the G4. These G4s are actually 7455s. instead of the later model 7445s. Which means you could technically replace these chips with a chip from, for instance, an MDD, replace it and make it a 1.42 gigahertz, clock it to 1.5 or something. But I'd say the thermals would be pretty bad because these heat sinks are a lot smaller, and I don't think they'd cool as well. In fact, I think this whole system would overheat if you did that. But there were factory companies like Daystar, which replaced these CPUs with, what was it? The 7457, which was never actually in an Apple product, and wasn't in many of any other products, so they're nearly impossible to find. That would be an interesting thing to replace it with. It's the L3 cache compatible, this is to version of the smaller chips. This could be compatible with L3 cache if it was in a system like that. So anyway, we're going to clean this all off, and I'll also replace the RAM. Let's do that right now, in fact. And while we're at it, we'll also replace the RAM battery. Now, the board looks a little dusty, but honestly, it's still pretty darn clean considering, so I think I'm going to leave it as it is right now. Let's see here, positive goes here, so we'll line that up, and here we go. We got a new RAM battery in there, and let's put the new RAM in. There we go. We've got a gig of RAM in there now. We'll clean off the thermal paste and we'll pop it back together. Here's to give you a better look of the G4 in here. It is a, let's get a good camera angle here. It is a 800 megahertz, of course, which this is, and it was made on the 19th week of 2002. Very interesting. The battery that was holding the charge was made in April 2002, so that's also interesting. I'm surprised this thing lasted and didn't pop or anything like that. Really cool. So anyway, I'm cleaning off the heat sinks right now, and then I'll pop this whole thing back together, and we'll take it from there. I figured since the Waveland card seems to be working fine, plus I don't know if I have an airport card right now to replace it with, I'll just leave it in. It seems to be working fine, so we'll do it this way for now at least. And this time I've reinforced it so it won't wobble, which I figure it probably did when you'd move the case. It's not now because it's taped in, so we'll be all set there. This time we'll put the base in and actually have it sitting on here correctly, and here we go. Now I just gotta tighten the screws and we'll turn it on. Okay, so everything's hooked back up. Let's see if it turns on and everything works. It's a good sign. Hey, we have a backlight and an Apple logo. Sweet. As we can see, that the Lucent Waveland card is working. It thinks it's a factory airport card. It has connected. Not a super strong signal, but it's working. And let's set the date and time. Okay, that's set. And we'll make sure that the RAM worked. It didn't. It did not. Why did it not work? memory. Uh-oh. Why, it's not good. It is reporting that the DIMM is a 256 module. And one more update. It was actually indeed a bad RAM module, as we see right here. The nice thing with ATEC and why I pay a premium for their RAM is it's a lifetime warranty. So I can literally have it replaced for free. This RAM's bad. Half of it's not working. I also tested it in my PowerBook, titanium PowerBook, and it didn't work. I only saw half of it, so I actually pulled a RAM module from the PowerBook, and I'll actually send this back to them and get a replacement for free. So anyway, back to the episode. Okay, so as you saw, this thing does not have an airport card in it. It has a Lucent WaveLAN in it. It works the same as an airport card, and I'll show you later on. They even detects it as an airport card, and it treats it just like a normal Mac would treat an airport card. It thinks it's an airport card, and that proves that the Lucent WaveLAN cards were airport cards. They were just repackaged, basically. The airport cards were. They were based off of those. So that's a very interesting thing. The owner must have done that, and to save a penny or two. Actually, they probably saved maybe up to $100. Back then, airport cards were really expensive. Now you can get them for a few bucks. But back then, the WaveLAN cards were many years older. They hadn't been made for a long time. They were outdated technology. And no one knew that only a handful of people knew that the airport cards were literally the same thing. So the WaveLAN cards went really cheap, and you could stick them into some Power Macs and some iMacs, some systems, and it would work. Some it won't. Some they won't fit. This, it fit, and I still have it in here, and it works great. So anyway, let's go into the details about the case. So we're going to move into here, and this is where the optical drive would come out. Let's see if I can bow it out a little bit. Here we go. That comes down, the tray comes out. We'll show you that when it's on. And like I said, the monitor swivels. It can go around in any direction, 180 degrees around, okay, up and down, and tilt whatever way you want it. And like Steve Jobs said, the screen basically just floats in mid-air. And of course, if the spring's going bad, it will start sagging, and you'll watch them just slowly drop like that. I had one of my iMacs that I turned into a lamp back in college days. It had a sagging arm. So it literally just came down like that by itself. But this one, it's still got a nice mint spring. It works great. Like I said, the owner took great care of this system. It had a lot of love, and it was such good care. Of course, you saw in that video when I did the RAM replacement, it actually had fresh thermal paste still in it. It had never been opened. I could tell later on looking, it was still the original factory thermal paste because the shape, it was a perfect square. It looked like it had been a pad. It was still moist. So this thing didn't have a hard life, and the inside was almost dust free. So we'll spin the base around here, and we'll look at the back ports here. Now the back ports changed on the second generations, and you can tell the difference between the first and second generations by looking at the back ports. We won't go into detail about the second generations until I actually record that video introducing either my first iMac G4 or my 1.25 that's been upgraded into the world's fastest iMac G4. Right now we're just going to focus on the first generation base. And if we look down here, we have a headphone jack or audio out, a Pro speaker jack, 2 2 FireWire 400, an Ethernet 10100, yeah, it's a 10100, power jack, the 56K modem dial-up here, 3 USB 1.1s, and a mini VGA port for a second display, and it was for mirrored displays. So if you plugged a second display out, you'd literally just be mirroring the main screen. But there was a patch out there, aftermarket patch, that patches the firmware that allows you to use it for more than mirroring. Apple just took that out of their so you'd go to the professional lines, and this was considered a consumer line system, but it had so much high-end stuff in it that a lot of professionals used them. And you know, but yeah, that's basically the outside of the case. And the screen alone, you know, Apple needs to come back with something like this, because the screens on the new iMacs are annoying, in my opinion. Any iMac that came out after the G4, it just doesn't seem right, in my opinion. But, you know, anyway. So I'm going to hook up this system, and we'll turn it on. I'll show you the neat little things about it. So let's go. Okay, so before we continue, I'd like to quickly cover my iSub. iSubs were made originally for Macs that had underperforming speakers, for instance, like the iMac G3. They had great Harman Kardon speakers, but they were a little quiet because they needed to pack a punch to do bass and stuff, and it still didn't sound quite right. So Apple got into partnership again with Harman Kardon to design the iSub, as we can see here. And if this looks familiar, yes, this is the same design. It's not compatible whatsoever, but it's the same design as what Harman Kardon still uses today on their sound stick setup. But this was a lone subwoofer. It did not have any speakers that came with it. It was just a subwoofer. And what made this so great was, one thing, it can shake the floor. It sounds great. The other thing was it could increase the sounds of the iMac G3 speakers, because it wouldn't have to worry about the bass, because the iSub would take care of it. It would give a louder, better punch to music, and it just sounded all together better. The problem was with these right here, first off, they are controlled by USB, and so it would not work on a G4 Cube. We'll go into more detail about that when I show my G4 Cube in probably the next episode. But it also had another problem. Apple stopped supporting them when Leopard came out, and they won't work at all on any Intel Mac. They will not work at all on an Intel Mac. I don't know why. It's probably, I think, something to do with PowerPC coding, for one thing. But it will not work on an Intel Mac. Intel Tiger did not have support whatsoever for this. And there was a patch for Leopard, which we'll quickly go over. The patch for Leopard would allow you to use the iSub again, but only on PowerPC systems. It still would not work on an Intel. And it has so many problems with it, especially with certain systems, like this iMac next to me, that I just couldn't do it. So Leopard, I don't use this on. I use this on Tiger, and it sounds incredible. I also use this on OS 9. The patch would have problems where you wouldn't be able to plug in new speaker sound sources and stuff until you restart the system. You couldn't unplug this and plug it back in. It could cause it to freeze. And with the iMac G4, it had problems where it would just literally garble all the sound, and the speakers would go wild. I could never get the patch to work right. I don't know why. But with Tiger support, I don't really care. So this is the iSub, and I filmed a video earlier today that I was going to actually refilm this for this video, but I'm filming this late at night, and I don't want to have to play all that music as loud as I did earlier, again, just to show you and wake up all my neighbors. So basically what I'm going to do is show you that clip and warn you that the bass and the thump coming out of this thing messes up the pop filter on the microphone, so you'll hear static and a lot of garbledness, but you still hear the full richness of this sound, and it actually sounds incredible. The microphone just doesn't pick it up properly. So we'll show you that clip really quick, and then we'll go back over to the iMac G4. So let's go. Testing out my iSub for my next video. Okay, so here's everything that came with the system I bought. The iMac G4, the Pro speakers, the Pro keyboard, the Pro mouse, and the iSub. All for 65 bucks. Great deal. And as you can tell, the keyboard is nasty. I haven't cleaned it. I have alcohol wiped the top of the keys. I'm not licking the thing, so I'm not too worried about it being nasty right now. It's literally just for testing systems, but I thought why not include it in the video since that's what came with this system, and that was probably the original keyboard. So that's cool. You don't see that very often. You usually find these alone. So to have all the original accessories that came with it, that's just icing on the cake, even if this thing is really grimy and it's got some goo on it that I don't even want to describe to you guys, and I hope you can't see it in the video. But the top of the keys are clean, and that's all I'm worried about. So anyway, this is everything it came with, and basically the iSub makes the Pro speaker sound even better and makes them run louder, as you could tell in the video we played earlier. So what we're going to do is boot this up, and it will boot straight into Leopard. Now, of course, Leopard doesn't officially support 800 megahertz. They support 867 or later. Runs fine with Leopard. It runs very quick and speedy. And with the RAM upgrade, it runs like a 1 gigahertz on Leopard, really, in my opinion. So that's good, and it runs great. So I'm going to turn this light off here and unplug it. If I can get it to untangle here. There we go. That's unplugged. And we will move into here, and we'll turn on the power from behind. And it will start up. Now, I apparently turned the speakers off, so it didn't bong. We'll have to check that. Yeah, they're plugged in. We'll have to check that. But right now, we are booting into Leopard as we speak. And here we are. We are in Leopard. I'm using a hybrid mountain lion / leopard theme. Half of it's mountain lion and the other half is leopard. It's a really neat layout and setup. I like it the way it looks now. It makes this thing really, it makes the screen seem to come off of the display. It's amazing how crisp and sharp this screen really is. This is 1440 by 900. And it's just really sharp. Let's see if we can. Okay, that's max brightness. We can go up and down. You know, big difference. It's a pretty bright screen. Now with the iMacs, we could upgrade this to an iMac G5 screen, and it would be more vibrant, deeper blacks and stuff. But honestly, this is a good enough screen as it is. Recording, there is some rainbow banding, but that's just the way the lens is catching it. It's really sharp, very crisp. So we'll turn the sound up. Okay, we got sound. So we've got everything booted up here. And well, first off, I want to show you how the optical drive looks like when it opens. So we'll go down here. I'll turn the light on. And we'll hit the eject key down over here. And there we go. It looks like it's sticking its tongue out. It's kind of funny. This looks kind of like a face. And a lot of people said that when this design came out. So it's cute. So anyway, we'll close the drive back up. And there we go. Now there is one problem with these doors. If you mess with them while you're opening up the case and stuff, sometimes they won't close properly anymore. And it takes a lot of adjustments to fix that. And luckily I didn't have to bother with them, since I didn't have to replace the hard drive or anything. I had problems with my first iMac G4, never got the door to work right, so I just took it off. And of course, you know, that one has no screen on it anyway, so it didn't really hurt the appearance. The other iMac I have, the world's fastest iMac G4, right now has the door sticking some. I'm going to have to do more adjustments to that when Colin sends in the new board. But anyway, so we are here. We are looking at the system. Let's go in and look at Leopard. So first off, we'll go over to About This Mac. And we can see the specs. 800 megahertz PowerPC G4, 1 gigabyte of RAM. Now the second generations could go up to 2 gigabytes of RAM. Apple said that they went a max of 1 gigabyte, but because they're DDR, they can actually go to 2 with no issues. So that's cool. Now, since we're already in here, let's go and I'll quickly show you what the Lucent Waveland looks like. It looks like a real airport because it thinks it's a real airport, and in fact I believe it even flashed it as a real airport card. Really neat. When you plug it in, there used to be an airport update that would come through a software update. I'm sure it flashed the firmware on there, because the Lucent Waveland silver cards only supported up to 64-bit encryption, and the golds supported up to 128 like the official airport cards did. The thing is, if you put a silver into a Mac in the airport card slot, it will flash it to a full airport and support 128 128-bit encryption. So that's pretty neat. So basically it would flash it with an Apple firmware as far as I can tell, and it works fine. So that's cool. So we'll go over here. Let's go to graphics and displays. We can see the GeForce 4 that's in it. It's 32 megs of RAM, VRAM. Not super great for gaming, but a lot better than the original ones that came with the GeForce 2 MX, which is very underpowered compared to this. It's good that they upgraded it for the bigger screen, everything sharper, it works better. So that's cool. Basically, the first generations, the 15 inches, they actually brought back the 800 megahertz. They have, of course, made the 15-inch from January to January 2002 to 2003, and sold it alongside the 17-inch. Well, when the 1 gigahertz 17-inch came out, they reintroduced the 800 megahertz 15-inch again, the original first generation, alongside with the second generation. Really weird. And it had all the same hardware in it. With the GeForce 2 MX, it was really dated by then. It was very underpowered by then compared to the other stuff they were selling. And it didn't sell well, and it didn't officially support OS 9, even though it's 100% compatible with OS 9. You couldn't do it without hacking it. really weird system. I've never seen one of those out in the wild, but I know there are a few. So anyway, so we've gone through all this. You know, we'll show you the original hard drive here. It's got the original super drive here. This is a normal DVD minus RW. It only supports minus RW DVD burns. Minus RW. So that's one thing. So we can show you in disk burning. That's the only ones it supports. It doesn't support or read plus R. And that's something you have to remember with original older Macs. If you're burning media to read for a DVD drive on an older Mac, it has to be a minus R. It cannot be a plus R, otherwise it will not read and the drive will eject the disk. So that's something you always keep in mind. Plus, earlier drives, of course, can't read dual layer either. So that's another issue. But this is the original super drive. It works. I've used it multiple times. It runs great. So we'll also go over, and this is the original 80 gig Maxter drive. It works too. Everything works fine on this system. Everything's got good, strong signal. It works incredibly well. And I'll tell you what, the performance of this system is very, it competes well with the 1 gigahertz. It's incredible the oomph this thing has. 200 megahertz doesn't seem to make much of a difference, and I think that's because of the boosted RAM I put into it that you saw earlier in the video. So, anyway, let's open up, for instance, 10.4 Fox, and let's just see how it performs. Now, I will probably switch this over to light browsing, but I did have this browsing on fuller earlier. It was using the full websites, and it seemed to be working fine, so we will see what it does. First off, let's go over to Google. And this is all real time. We'll just let it load up and see what it does. If it loads up. I really need to stop demonstrating the internet when I'm filming these, apparently. I don't know if I'm connected to the internet. Oh, here it comes. Wow, that was a lot slower than it was. That's concerning. Well, let's just search Rutke mods for the heck of it. There we go. Yeah, that's a little quicker. This is using the full Google, full web browsing page and stuff. So I'll tell you what. Let's switch this over to like the Classilla user agent here. Go down to 10.4 Fox. We'll switch it over to Classilla so we can be the lightest of the light just to see how it works. Now, you could probably get away with the iOS user agent on this for some odd reason. It seems to work great with the iOS user agent. But if you really want to just browse really quickly on anything, let's go to Facebook. You know, switching it over to the Classilla user agent does make a big difference. So here it comes, and it is loaded instantly, nearly. It's amazing how quickly it can load Facebook in mobile. Super ultralight mobile. So that's cool. We'll go, I'd show you more about this, but you know, there's not much of a point. And it does not run YouTube. Not it's just not a YouTube kind of system. So we're not going to show you that either. But this gives you a general idea how well this actually works. It works pretty good. And Leopard's very usable on this. It's very quick. It's very snappy. You know, you click on something, it pops up nearly, well, as quick as a hard drive will let you do it. And you know, and we have the iSub plugged in right now, and of course it doesn't work because I don't have that patch in Leopard. But we can show you that it is plugged in. If we go over to USB, it should show up. It doesn't even show up in the device tree. Oh yeah, here it is, right here. That is the iSub right there. It's not identifying it or anything because it doesn't know what it is. Really interesting. I understand why Apple did it to a certain degree, but I kind of wish they had left it in for Leopard. But if someone had tried it on an IntelliSystem, it probably would have crashed, blah, blah, blah. It wouldn't have been good. There would have been a lot of complaints, blah, blah, blah. So the PowerPC version of Tiger is the last operating system that supports it. So we are going to restart the system, and we'll go into Tiger. We gotta wait for the bootloader to load up everything here. Any day now. Come on. I'm not getting any younger. Open firmware boot loader. I'll tell you what, that the boot menu is just slow. There we go. Now we can select Tiger and presto. Now as Tiger boots up, I'll tell you one thing. I haven't finished setting up Tiger 100% yet, and this is based off of the Tiger that's installed on my G5, I think. I just copied the files over from that. So it's got some issues right now with 10.4 so I don't think we'll be able to get it to work. I'm going to have to dump the original files that were in it. But we could try it, but I don't know if I want to or not. So we'll see once this boots up. And welcome to Tiger. Everything's basically booted up. We still got a few things loading, but we are now in Tiger and it works. We can open up, for instance, Classic, because that's a nice Tiger thing. Start that up, have that running in the background, while we also open up System Preferences. And we'll go over to Sound to show you the iSub. It is not showing the iSub. That is odd. Why is it not showing the iSub? So I'm going to figure out what's going on here real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, go figure. I don't know why, but for some reason it didn't detect it was plugged in. I just unplugged it and plugged it back in, and we'll go back through here. System Preferences, Sound, and here we go. Now if we turn the volume up and down, we'll get the Pro speakers beeping. Okay? We can also adjust the iSub's volume to figure out how loud the bass should be. If we go down, we can hear it go up. Okay? And this is what's really incredible. We'll turn the volume all the way up. Listen to this. That is some thump. The whole floor shook. Really neat. Really neat how they did that. So we'll turn the volume down to non-deafening. And you know, that's the iSub. I can't really show you a whole lot more about it because of how late at night it is now. But that's the iSub. So we'll go into more info so you can at least see what it looks like plugged in. USB. Here we go. Detects it as an iSub. It works. Now the neatest controls for the iSub are actually in OS 9, and I'll show you what that looks like too when we get into OS 9. And basically, I don't really need to show you guys much about Tiger because you've seen Tiger perform 1,000 times before in this series. Tiger works great. This was the last officially supported operating system for this particular iMac. It works flawlessly. It works really quick. It takes a while to boot. Don't know why. Leopard seems to boot quicker. Don't know why. But it works better. It's more fluent. And it's more fluid. It's of course just the best operating system you can use for most PowerPC systems. It just works, you know, really nice setup. You know, you've got iTunes 9. We can open that up for the heck of it, you know, and well, what the heck, let's play a song. We'll play it a little quiet just to show you. And this is the same song we played earlier, that Silent Partner song. We'll turn the volume down and just let it play. And you can still hear the iSub taking it. It works great. It works. It works great. So we'll close out iTunes. We'll close out iTunes. Here we go. And that's Tiger, basically. I don't need to show you guys much more about Tiger. Tiger's Tiger. So we'll restart it one last time. And we'll boot it into OS 9. And here comes OS 9. And we are up in OS 9, and it just works. It works great. We'll go over to System Profiler. Here's all the information on the system. Like I said before, this is the very last iMac that ever supported Mac OS 9. So, really neat here. We can go over to Devices and show you everything that's plugged into it. It shows you the iSub and all the stuff that's plugged in. Really cool, you know. And this is OS 9. The display is really sharp, extremely sharp, and everything should work. I actually have not saved Clazzilla to the desktop. Don't know why. So we'll go over and find it. It's hard to click this with the other hand. So this is probably the first time Clazzilla has ever been loaded, but I do have it connected to the internet, I think. So we'll see what it does. Yeah, it's got internet. We'll open up Google. There's Google. Very quick. Google, if anything, loads quicker than 1 second. Sorry about that. My air conditioner came on midway through sentence. Anyway, Google loads really quick. It loads really fast on Clazzilla. And we can search me here, and boom, it's loaded up. Really cool. You know, and we can open up, for instance, my Social Blade page, maybe. We'll see. It might load it. It's trying to. There we go. There's my Social Blade page. Really cool. It doesn't render it very well, as we can see. Wow, that's a little rough. But it works. It loaded the page up. There's the Social Blade page. So anyway, I brought up Social Blade to remind you guys real quick, before we wrap up the video, that PowerMac G5 video, the giveaway for the PowerMac G5 is almost over. There's about 60 subs left, 60 or 70, and then it's over. So click this link up here and go to that. If you haven't entered yet, I thought since I brought that up, I might as well mention that now. So yeah, go check that video out if you haven't. And let's wrap up OS 9 and wrap up the video. So I told you I'd show you how the iSub works in OS 9. If we go over to Sound, and then Output, or Speakers. OS 9 was really neat because it showed you what was plugged into the system, and you could actually control channel by channel and all this stuff a lot easier. Everything was, it was just clearer. So let's try Sounds. I don't know if this is hurting your ears, so we'll I'll probably have to cut this down in post, but it works, as we can hear. I always loved the sound features on this, and you know, the controls it had. It was just really neat, you know. I don't know why Apple made it. They made it a little too simple, in my opinion. I like having all this extra configurability. So that's really neat. So anyway, that's basically it for today's episode. Don't forget, again, for that PowerMac G5 giveaway, this might be the last video I remind you guys about it in, ever. That giveaway is almost over. I will be doing a live stream to find out who officially won, and as long as you're in the United States, you are eligible to win. So good luck on that if you haven't entered, or if you have, you know, and if you haven't, go enter. As long as you're in the US, you've got a shot. So yeah, anyway, so that's basically the end of today's episode, and thank you guys for watching. This has been a RutKMods video.